I can do this. Colleagues, I stand in support of House Bill 5016A, and I bring it to you today as it appropriates money from the general fund to the Leg Admin Committee, the Legislative Assembly, which is our collective budget, the Legislative Council Committee, the Legislative Fiscal Office, Legislative Revenue Office, our Commission on Indian Services and Legislative Policy, and Research Committee for the biennial expenses. Colleagues, for those who would like to see the exact appropriations, you can go online to Oregon OLS and look up House Bill 5016. Colleagues, there was one issue of discussion within your General Government Subcommittee, and that was a conversation around staffing. We have met with the co-chairs, and they are working diligently with the General Government Subcommittee on an interim evaluation to determine what is the actual need and to determine should a plan be brought forward. Again, the co-chairs want to make sure that we do this process in a systematic way and to determine what is the true need. But with that said, colleagues, House Bill 5016 is our budget, and I would encourage an aye vote.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion, Representative Reschke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
So we'll note that yesterday we voted on House Bill 2712, which was a budget bill for judges. And for the next biennium, we are increasing their budget by $16 million, and the following biennium by another $32 million, not billion, but $1 million. And that was the exact ask for LA2s, was $16 million. So what we're saying with these budgets is it's fine for judges to get that kind of raise. It's not fine for our legislative staff to get that raise. When you look at the budgets between the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branches, we cheat ourselves far too much. We play false humility, but we're also scrambling to keep up with the other two branches. And so I'm going to be a no on this budget, not because of all the other portions, but in protest, I think we should be staffing our offices so that we can meet the needs of our constituents, we can meet the needs of our committees, and we can fulfill our duty here in this building to the best of our ability. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion, Representative Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
Colleagues, and this message is for really colleagues and folks who are tuning in. We're anticipating the challenges of an economic period that could get worse. And I just want to say how much I appreciate the co-chair's hard work in trying to figure out where to put the priorities. You have 90 legislators, which probably means 183 different opinions about where the money should go. So I appreciate that. I do think that Oregonians, though, need to recognize, and we in future sessions should have an open dialogue about the structure and system of our three branches of government, and that for a long time we tried to put off becoming more modern, and in 2008 we went to annual sessions, for lack of a better term, long and short, but we never really funded the capacity to actually have meaningful two-session activities. In many ways, we have continued to staff the legislative branch, as my friend and colleague Mike Caldwell once said, the Christmas time non-union part-time help. We ask a lot of our legislative folks in terms of the permanent staff. We ask a lot of, quite frankly, our own staff. We even ask a lot of legislators that a lot of people on the outside think the salaries are high, and a lot of us have to have at least a couple other jobs to be able to be here. We make that choice. That's what we do when we run for office. I accept that. But I think it is time for a mature conversation about what capacities are needed for a robust and relatively equal three-branch system. We really don't have that. And when we have 4.5 million people that we are supposed to be supporting and helping, and we have an increasingly dynamic global marketplace, and we have pressures around the world that make decisions we can make a little more challenging every year, it is time that we look at not just staffing up in terms of LA2, but also staffing up in terms of the lawyers we have in LC and LFO and LRO and the custodial staff. This is the people's house. This is supposed to be the most sacred of secular structures and processes. We are the voice of the people for the executive to execute and the judiciary to interpret. So I join the voices of all who hope for future considerations and investments. I respect the job that was made. I support this budget today because I think there are some investments there that are helpful. But at some point, we need to have a real transparent conversation about how capable we want a legislative branch that is increasingly tasked with overseeing, quite frankly, a much more dependent system for providing services. I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Bossart Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I quickly just want to speak to the nature of nonpartisan staff. I want to first say that these people are incredibly hardworking, incredibly brilliant, and serve the body well. Unfortunately, they have to work within the system that we've given them. And I will note that other states have they have partisan staff. So they have LRO for one party and LRO for another party. And it's something that I have certainly looked into. That would be expensive. I understand that. Or maybe we split it in half and it wouldn't be as expensive. I don't know. But there has been too many times where I've seen that a member of nonpartisan staff appears to have conformed to what has been asked of them from the people at the top. I don't have to get into specifics. I just want to acknowledge that we're working within a very partisan and political system, and I want to make sure that we can encompass and pursue nonpartisan staff when we talk about it. Again, I want to say over and over and over again, wonderful people, brilliant, hardworking, appreciate them so much, and also acknowledge that they have to work within this system, which I suspect is very, very tough. So appreciate this bill coming forward. It's one that comes forward every session. I just want to throw a little marker down to say it's something that we have to consistently be watching. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Tran.
Mr. Speaker, colleagues, I will be a no on this bill. I was a no in the Subcommittee on Ways and Means General Government, and it is to throw down a marker. As many of you know, this session I have advocated for funding year-round legislative staffing. This session, we were not able to accomplish this. Let this statement be part of the record when we revisit this issue in 2026. We must ensure adequate staffing for all 90 legislators. It is encouraging that this budget funds a study on the issue. I'm eager to add the outcomes of this study to the data and testimony already shared during the public hearing and made clear legislator offices need more staffing. When this bill was before the Subcommittee on General Government, I heard from dozen colleagues on both sides of the aisles joining me in voicing strong support for a full-time LA2. From members who work full-time jobs outside this building, like myself, having trustworthy, knowledgeable, proactive staff is a major determinant of success. The interim is when many of us must reprioritize our outside full-time work in this citizen legislature and hand off many responsibilities to our chiefs. Yet this is exactly the moment we lose our support staff. As a committee and caucus chair, I need my chief of staff laser focused on policy, not having to juggle policy with scheduling and constituent needs. Our constituents' problems do not stop because it is the interim. Their problems are not part-time, and our reduced staff capacity should not be their burden. They need our responses to be just as timely as they are during the session. Too often, the issues our constituents bring us can literally be life and death. They deserve the full strength of our legislature and tax dollars working to address those issues. I sincerely hope this is the last interim where this body loses so many qualified staff at Sunny Dye because our branch has failed to fund year-round staffing. The instability this creates is both avoidable and unacceptable. More than that, it costs our branch institutional knowledge, continuity, and capacity at exactly the moment when our constituents still need our help. I want to be clear. I understand the difficult decision that must be made to balance this budget. I deeply appreciate the leadership of our Joint Ways and Means co-chairs, their staff, and our budget writers. And again, I will be voting no. It is essential that we fund our operations of our legislative branch. It is equally essential that we continue this conversation and work to meet this ongoing need. I thank you for the opportunity to add this to the public record.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion, Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
I will be voting yes on House Bill 5016 today. However, that is with the understanding that this vote comes with the expectation that we use the interim to look at solutions for staffing member offices in the future. We all know how critical our staff are. They aren't just the unstoppable engines of our offices, but they are often the first point of contact for our constituents and a steady presence behind every piece of policy. Every session, the collective we use precious resources to recruit and develop talent. And every session, we throw some of that investment away, leaving our permanent staff responsible for a continuously increasing workload in preparation for the next session. If we are truly committed to public service, then we must be equally committed to supporting the people who make it possible. Staff in this building should not be treated as expendable. We should want to retain and empower our workforce, not burn it out. Their work doesn't end on Sunny Dye, and neither should our responsibility to them. This is a conversation that should not be delayed any longer. The interim must be used to develop real solutions and to find results that ensure our offices are equipped, not just during session, but year-round to meet the needs of our districts with dignity and professionalism. We often speak here about valuing labor. Let's make sure that includes the labor within these very walls. Thank you, and I look forward to continuing this conversation.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion, Representative Mannix.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
I appreciate the remarks by my colleague, Representative Nelson, about what we need to be doing about our own staff in order to empower us to be better ombudspersons. There's 60 of us in the House and 30 in the Senate, and we are the ones who can be closest to the people in our districts, reflecting their concerns and their issues, and sometimes being aware of their individual problems and how government affects them. When we look at the totality of government, we've got the executive branch, we've got the judicial branch, and we have the legislative branch. As to the judicial branch, I supported the increase in pay for judges. That wasn't based on a moment of whimsy. It was based on several years of workup demonstrating how we needed to improve those judicial salaries to get anywhere near to what those qualified people would be being paid elsewhere. As to the executive branch, we're looking at some limitations as to where we spend because of the limitations of our income. As to the legislative branch, we need to be recognizing that this kind of budget empowers us to carry on our work without adding additional, I think, ammunition to the cause, effort to the cause, because we're watching out for funding limitations. But I like the idea that we're going to be taking a look at what we're going to do about staff and take a look at what we can do to increase our capability to be responsive to our constituents. All in all, we're funding the third branch of government, our branch, and I think that this is a reasonable response to the budgetary needs of our branch, and I am a yes vote.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
Colleagues, I was going to make a motion, but I didn't have enough legislative staff to get the motion done. So therefore, I'm going to talk about the need for more legislative staff. Colleagues, when you have a district that represents 37% of the state of Oregon, it is even more of a burden when you don't have, which I have great legislative staff. I do. But they're located in Salem because that's where most of our policy and our work is done. And they do an exceptional job. But to have somebody in district also would be invaluable. When you try to drive 5 hours across a district and you're invited to 2 meetings in one day, you can't have good representation. And the multiple city councils and the multiple counties like to have myself there, believe it or not, or more importantly, most of the time they like to have my staff there instead of me. But we're unable to do that. So without a motion, I would just encourage, and I vote today, but let's reconsider and let's really talk about what we need for legislative staff in the future.
Thank you, Representative. Further discussion? Representative Chaichi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To the bill.
To the bill.
Apologies in advance, colleagues. I don't usually like talking this much, so sorry. Today I rise in unsurprising opposition to House Bill 5016, which is our agency budget. I want to begin by saying every single department makes this work possible and does amazing work for us. Thank you. My dissent on this bill today is not a reflection of their critical work. Rather, I am standing today in defense of that work. Keen-eyed legislators may notice that this bill came to us out of the Capital Construction Subcommittee of Ways and Means, but it's not a major capital project, so what's going on? For now, I sit on the General Government Subcommittee of Ways and Means, and that's the usual subcommittee this budget comes through. We had 2 informational meetings and a public hearing about this bill, as well as multiple meetings where the Assembly budget was discussed. The hot topic of all these discussions was around including full-time, year-round funding for our second legislative assistants. The budget before us today does not include that funding. In fact, an amendment for that funding was denied consideration by our subcommittee. Our committee was actually denied consideration of the entire budget, not just that amendment. Prior to this session, our staff, the first unionized legislative staff in the country, was in bargaining. As a staunch labor advocate, it was unusual for me to be on the side of management. But as management, myself and some of my colleagues requested updates on the bargaining being done in our name. Eventually, we got that update, and it included the discussion about funding for a year-round second staffer. I know many members in this chamber supported proposals for a second full-time LA. But we were told that adding additional year-round staff could not be a subject of bargaining because it would impact the budget, which requires approval from the Legislative Assembly. A bipartisan bicameral sign-on letter that requested funding for LA2 circulated in December and was sent to leadership of both chambers and the Ways and Means co-chairs. In addition to this and the advocacy of staff, numerous legislators from across the aisle and chambers advocated for this funding in committee hearings over the last couple months. We're now less than a week away from constitutional sine die, but still in session. We were told we could make improvements to staffing levels in session, and we've been stonewalled with the measure taken out of the hands of its original committee. Members of this body have overwhelmingly indicated that the workload is too high for just our chiefs of staff to handle as a solo staffer, especially as we're considered a citizen legislature. Many of us have to maintain day jobs. As our good Speaker Pro Tem has mentioned since our public hearing in general government, we had over 10% of our colleagues appear in support of this funding request. 12 legislators testified from both chambers and both parties at an 8 a.m. committee meeting, not to mention the support of every single one of the 8 members of our subcommittee who spoke in support of this change. And while I appreciate the effort to find a solution, which today takes the form of a budget note to research the workload in other states and how they deal with it, that doesn't solve the problem that we as members brought to our presiding officers. Whether or not there are similar workloads in other states and how they address that is immaterial to the issues we face here in this legislature. It might be interesting information, and I'll bet there are some innovative solutions out there, but there are also legislative bodies in this country that don't have any staff at all. Will this research yield the answer that we're lucky to have staff in the first place? When we, as independently elected officials, are denied the tools to perform the functions of our office at the level of need required by our constituents, it denies our constituents the representation and access to essential constituent services that they are entitled to and deserve. In our subcommittee, we often discuss the importance of redundancy among staffers in our vital state agencies. So why do we expect a single staffer to run our offices during the interim? Why are we hindering our ability to maintain standards if our chief of staff needs to take family leave, experiences an emergency, or simply needs time to deal with the illnesses and life situations that arise for all of us on the basis of being a human being? The structure of our legislative staffing promotes high turnover and staff burnout. Our legislative session timeline is too short for staff to take time off without it negatively impacting their office, their work, and their legislator, but they also can't take time in the interim without the office going totally unstaffed in their absence. This is a highly specialized field of work that requires niche skills and dedication, and every session, we lose amazing staff with a wealth of knowledge because of the seasonal and unstable nature of their roles. We must do better. Finally, colleagues, I want to discuss something I've brought up several times in multiple contexts this year: process, and what isn't working in that process. This budget should have come out of our subcommittee. But what our subcommittee wanted, after hearing overwhelming testimony in favor, was not honored. As I was considering voting no on a budget that did not include year-round LA2 funding, I had to accept that I could be temporarily replaced in order to get the needed votes, or perhaps replaced on the committee altogether. This is not a unique situation, as we saw last week when in the Transportation Committee, a member who would not vote for the bill was discharged from his committee assignment. Today, as I speak on this bill, I have also had to accept that I may lose a committee assignment that I value. But that's what I'm here for, to speak up against the status quo regardless of personal cost to myself. I know and appreciate that many of you are not in the position to do the same. As I checked in with several of my colleagues about this budget, colleagues who'd been staunch advocates for year-round LA2 funding, it seemed to me that people felt intimidated. Members expressed concerns to me about their gavels, their bills, and their funding requests. When a majority is overruled by a few people, that is not what is defined as a democratic process. For that reason, I'm opposed to this budget so long as it doesn't include the year-round LA2 funding we were told could be allocated via this process. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Is there further discussion? Excuse me, Representative Anderson did yield his time to Representative Chaichi. Seeing no further discussion, Representative Smith, do you wish to close? He does.
I do, Mr. Speaker, just very briefly. Colleagues, I just want to share for the record that the legislative branch's total budget is $275.8 million and includes 610 positions. Among that budget, one-time funding is provided for a third party to evaluate a staffing model for member offices. Colleagues, I hear you, the co-chairs hear you. Let us proceed forward in a systematic way in which we will be able to bring a plan forward for this entire body to consider. I ask for your support of House Bill 5016A.
Thank you, Representative. Those of the opinion the bill should pass will vote aye. Those opposed, no. The clerk will open the voting system. And House Bill 5016, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed.